RSI has a mining ship. They actually have two mining ships. They have the Orion, and they also have the Arrastra. We're going to go ahead and discount the Orion for now because it's gigantic and it's nowhere near being made. But the Arrastra was introduced a couple of years ago as a kind of mid to large size mining ship from RSI, focused on multi-crew gameplay with some interesting design ideas. Today I'm going to take you through the Arrastra's Inside Star Citizen, the introduction to the ship, what the heck it's supposed to bring to the game, and why people like it. Because honestly, I feel like this ship is kind of forgotten. It doesn't get any real mentions. It never really shows up in any sort of marketing material, probably for good reason. It's still just a concept, and we don't know when this thing might be coming to the game. I personally don't think they should bring it in until mining takes a step forward and becomes a little more complex. But it's CIG. Who knows what happens? Either way, here is a look at the RSI Arrastra at its introduction.
At the top of the scale, we've got the Orion. That's the kind of end game of mining. And we saw this gap between the two. So the RSI Arrastra is the ship that fills that gap. So the Arrastra kind of combines the core visual elements that we've kind of developed over the years of RSI. It still has that definite triangular arrowhead shape to it, so it still feels at home within the RSI family. One of the things we struggled with a little bit at the beginning when concepting it was we didn't want it to feel too sleek. It really needs to feel like it had a functional purpose, and that really led us down exposing a lot more of the industrial elements. We've built on the idea of RSI layering in their ships to kind of really expose the core framework of the ship down the central kind of columns.
It also has a much more...
You know what would have been interesting, seeing how this thing is focused so much on mining, would have been if they tried to make this like a smaller Odyssey. A sort of self-contained long-distance exploration ship, but it could also do the refining. I think the Odyssey can only refine gases. It would have been awesome if this could do that long-distance refining while also being self-sustaining. I think it might have enough to be considered self-sustaining. Actually, now that I think of it, this ship does have the kitchen. It's got the mining. I think it has a refinery in there. Turrets, beds, this actually might be self-sustaining. Let's see.
Comfortable habitation for the crew to live on. It's got plenty of utility on board for day-to-day life, as well as a place to actually land additional vehicles in the back.
It has everything you need to spend a large amount of time away from dock, away from station. It's got an onboard refinery. It's got a large amount of ore storage, as well as onboard cargo. It's a kind of big, serious mining ship, and it allows for a crew of up to 5 to kind of go out and really kind of step into that professional level mining outfit without requiring, a big capital ship.
We have multiple stations for different people to actually mine at the same time as each other.
They're all sat together in a very RSI.
Something I think is worth pointing out here is that it does say these are concept models on the screen, but if you look at some of the older concepts they used to make, they would basically just be pictures. They didn't used to show the overall build of the ship with you can tell this is kind of styled out to actually make sense. And one of the problems they used to have in Star Citizen was they would make the ships, they would build the picture, and then they would design the ship based on the picture. But then the ship would end up in the game and it would be completely different in terms of metrics, because they realized, oh, you need this much size for this component, or you need that much space for this hallway, and things would shift around. That's why we get ships like the Mercury Star Runner, which don't fit the concept image that they were first introduced with. So at one point, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, they started to actually get these designed, and they had some of the teams that would step in later in the process join during the concepting phase, so that they could then get the whole thing figured out beforehand. And then by the time they got around to the final art and stuff, the people who were working on final art were there from the beginning, and they know this is how it's supposed to be. And it leads to less ships being completely different from their concepts, which is good on their part, but it can be a little misleading, because you see something like this and you're like, oh, how much they've modeled. Oh boy, this must be a year away. 3 years later.
Like bridge section. The remote turrets that are on the Arrastra all have some level of transformation in terms of their location. The 2 at the front can slide backwards and forwards along, so you don't require the pilot to have to go left a bit, go right a bit.
But then we also have a large one in the center, which can descend through the middle of the ships.
Can actually transform down through the ship and out the bottom to cover the underside. So really you can mine in 360 degrees with this ship.
That is pretty cool.
And as it cuts through the ship, you can actually see the turret as it travels from one side to the other.
And then additional crew members can help either position the ship if they want to change location or deal with the mined goods at the rear of the ship in the cargo bay. But the ship can also hold ground mining vehicles. If you are planet side, some of those crew members could take mining vehicles that you've stored aboard out and do some surface mining whilst the ship hangs around nearby to tackle some ground mining rocks.
See, okay, when you say stuff like this is where I think CIG has a big hole that they need to fill in their mining gameplay. Ground mining by ship is, I don't think, great. I think that there needs to be mining into ground deposits rather than into rocks on the ground. This ship, especially with the laser that can like translate through the bottom of the ship, this is the kind of ship that should be able to land on the ground and then stick a laser down into a borehole and mine in the planet itself. That would make so much sense for me if they had not only these bays for the rocks to be in here, because then the rocks could go off board like he just said. They can head off the ship, go out and do some mining of the nearby rocks while the Arrastra sits there and mines the main deposit underground, and then they can all refine together on the ship. But the way that this is currently modeled with Star Citizen's mining, basically you would land with your Arrastra, mine one rock, maybe two rocks, maybe a couple rocks, and then you would have to lift the ship up and move somewhere else. It doesn't make sense for a ship like this. The fuel costs, the powering on and off, all that kind of stuff, it just wouldn't be worth it. So that's why I look at something like this and I'm like, you guys gonna have to update mining. We're gonna have to make some progress here before this ship comes out. And for that reason, I don't see it coming out anytime soon. I think if they did release it soon, it would be an injustice to the potential that it has.
Surface mining whilst the ship hangs around nearby to tackle some ground mining rocks. So this ship is really perfectly placed for people who want to go mining but don't quite know what they're going to encounter along the way. They are equipped to tackle anything on the surface, anything on space.
One of the benefits of concepting the Arrastra now is that we know a lot more about our game, a lot more about how mining works and kind of features in the game. That gives us a much better understanding of what's important for a mining ship. And that's one of the things that we'll take on to when we kind of deliver the Orion in the future.
So this is a great example of how development on some ships improves and expedites others. Compared to the Orion, this bridges the gap in a few nice ways. It leverages all the existing mining loops and mechanics that we have in game at the moment, whereas the Orion is going to be solely mining in space. It is a big ship designed for sitting out.
The Orion's freaking huge. It's so stupidly big. Hold on, let me see if I can find, there's a really funny video clip that shows how much the Orion has grown. Yeah, here we go. Check this out. This is crazy. This is very indicative of just how much they had to change the size of their ships because the concepts didn't match what the ship was meant for before.
Not much room around for the crew or anything, so we had to scale it up to fit all that in, which is also good because in the original scale, it was a bit too small for the final mining ship you would get. So it would be a bit disappointing to get it, because originally it was only half the length of the Idris. You would like your absolute final, most expensive.
Look at how much freaking bigger they made this ship, dude. Like, they're compensating. Somebody told them, nah, man. You loser, you can't mine nothing. And they were like, oh yeah? Look how big I am now.
It's a mining ship to be a thing of like, oh, it's massive and could do loads of stuff. So we've scaled it up pretty much 100% bigger than it was, just to be able to fit all the stuff in and for it to be impressive.
It's very much industrial, so the center section is going to be quite open
Dude,
plan. And
that's ridiculous. That's like literally, he said 100% increase.
So
it looks like more.
Is going to be
This looks like a solid, like 120% size increase. It's crazy. And this was back in, I think, 2017. 2017. Oh my God, the Orion's going to grow.
In deep space, mining big asteroids, it won't be capable of going down to planet size and mining on there.
What we kind of learned from the Orion is that a lot of our RSI ships feel very, very aggressive. They feel very military and fast. And if you think of like a big industrial mining ship, the Orion is kind of the opposite to that. It's this huge kind of bulky ship that is very purpose-built. And what we want to do with the Arrastra is take the lessons that we learned from that and combine that with some of the more modern RSI art styles and manufacturing techniques.
The Arrastra is the sort of all-in-one mining ship. You've started hand mining at the very start. You've progressed to, say, a rock as the next step, then a prospector, then a mole. This is the big step that lets you do a bit of everything. You can mine, you can refine, you can transport. And then if you want to go even deeper into that, then you go off to the Orion at the end.
Yeah, I mean, that honestly, it mines, it refines, it transports. It sounds like you could just work and live from that ship for a long amount of time. There's a lot that they could do with mining. Right now, we're still at a very, not a very basic level. I think they've done a lot of what they would like with mining. The dynamics of heating up the inside of the rock to make it crack, probably the most important part. But if you look at the jobs that they used to have that were included in mining a long time ago, they were talking about the pilot, obviously, the scan operator, which would be required to do more detailed scans of the asteroids, the beam operator, which we already have, obviously, somebody who would detect reactions within the rock. So this would tell you basically how stable or unstable the rock is. That's kind of included in beam operator. Laser seismometer shows each individual tremor within an asteroid, as well as the superposition in the various waves, which I guess is technically, maybe that's the stability of it. Oh, okay. This is the resistance reading. This is the instability reading. But then you have the materials processor. I guess this tells you what is inside of the rock. Cargo operator, we know of that. Refinery operator, we don't know really of what that would be. But all of these things can be, I think, more split up and specialized for the Orion and the Arrastra. And honestly, I think they kind of have to. If the Arrastra is just a bigger mole, then we're lost. If the Orion is just a bigger Arrastra, then we're more lost. And this is one of the biggest questions I have looking at where Star Citizen 1.0 is, where Star Citizen's development is, and what it feels like their goals are right now. I don't really see an in-depth mining model that's in-depth enough to validate the Orion at this moment by 1.0, based off of what they're saying. And what I hope is that at some point in the next year, we do hear about what I'm probably going to call, this doesn't fit with CIG's nomenclature, but I would genuinely call it T2 mining. They've gotten to T2 mining. They've updated mining several times throughout the years, but in terms of a tier 2 kind of style of mining, I'm thinking industrial level, like a solid step up from your small scale enterprise who's just mining stuff to take it somewhere to somebody who is running an industrial endeavor of getting thousands of tons of material and transporting it somewhere else or putting it on a ship to send somewhere else. They got to make that worth it. These can't just be supersized, smaller mining ships. So I hope that they do talk about that some point soon. But there's your look at the Arrastra and I guess a little bit of the Orion. Cheers.